Hi, my name is Craig Frazier and I'm here at the Kratex Colors facility in Connecticut, and today we're going to talk about the Kratex illustration line. Now for those of you who don't know much about this paint, it's pretty interesting. You've heard of a lot of different Kratex color systems out there. The illustration color happens to be the flagship line of quality when it comes to Kratex paints. Not only are they used in some of the top quality pigments, these are very durable, but they're also very finely ground for high detail as well as excellent atomization. But not just the pigments are finely ground, they're also shearing the acrylic resin at a submicron level, which is unheard of in this industry, to give you the ultimate durability, the quality, and the detail you need when doing illustration work all the way up to automotive. And the different sizes we have available here is 1 ounce, 2 ounce, and 8 ounce sizes. Not just these sizes, we have different systems out there. There's the full line of illustration transparent colors, which were developed by Drew Blair. He developed the palette for those colors. We also have the opaque colors, very similar to the transparent line, but with opacity, they actually have excellent coverage. We have Tim Gore's line, which is Bloodline and Lifeline. Very similar to the palettes he uses in the movie and special effects industry for photorealistic flesh colors, as well as some of the monster effects that he does on prosthetics and any of the stuff that Tim does. If you know Tim, you know what I'm talking about. And last but not least, we have the gray, natural gray line created by Steve Gibson, which mimics the classical fine art style of using gray tones when basing and building up paint jobs. So whatever your job, whatever your hobby, whatever your desire, Illustration Line has a top quality paint, excellent shear, excellent detail, excellent adhesion that will work in pretty much anything you want it to do. Now when I mentioned that the Kratex illustration line was a flagship, I didn't mean to say it's on a pinnacle all by itself. These paints work very well with Kratex's other systems out there. For instance, the UVLS clears, even the 4030 resins, as well as the Autoborn automotive resins and sealers work very well with the illustration paint line. You can use the UVLS clears either as an adhesion promoter, a balancing clear, or a top clear to illustration line. So to sum it up, illustration line works with everything in the Kratex system. Many people using the illustration colors, as well as many of the other Kratex colors, think that you can't use them right out of the bottle. That's not true. Matter of fact, just about every paint that Kratex makes can be, for some situations, used right out of the bottle. For instance, I'm going to take the opaque white right here. Now you want to give it a good shake. And use a little marble inside, and you can hear that. And as soon as it, you can hear it pretty good. It's shaking up pretty decently. And I'm going to take my Eclipse CS. Now this has a 0.5 opening on it, which is very, very easy to spray direct from the bottle. And the reason I'm using white is white actually has the heaviest pigment load of any of the paint. So if any paint is going to have an issue being sprayed out of the airbrush directly from the bottle without any reducer, it would be this color. So I'm going to take it, I've got about maybe 35 psi on this with a 0.5 nozzle, and I'm going to come in and just spray dagger stroke, dots, or just come in and just spray a nice gradation that I can then eventually, I can keep it really solid white here and then blend down. Now you can see the grain texture of this very easily. You also get some very fine details with it as well. All of this with a medium airbrush right out of the bottle, no reducer whatsoever. Does that mean you don't need the reducer? Well, let's say you want a really, really fine gradation. Now, by the way, this is opaque white. It's going to have a heavier pigment load, and it actually is a little bit more grainier than if you're using, let's say, the transparent white. But if you want to make this actually flow even better for, let's say, a small airbrush, let's go ahead and grab ourselves the Micron. I've got a Micron C here. Now this is a 0.23 millimeter. That's even much smaller. It's literally less than half the size of the other one over here. Plus this is designed for mostly details. Now if I was to put the paint in here, could I spray it? Yes, but doing fine details, it may clog a little bit directly out of the bottle without raising the pressure. There are some tricks to raising the pressure higher. What I want to show you is we're going to mix this paint up first, and we're going to combine it. We're going to actually cocktail it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with just the white that I used earlier. Wrong bottle. And I'm going to put some white in here. And I'm going to do a 1-to-1 mixture of white with 4030. Now the 4030 is basically urethane resin. I use this quite a bit on my canvases. Now it's for extra adhesion. Also on some surfaces, you're going to want to use it because this has a great feel to it when you're spraying. And I usually go anywhere from 30% to 1:1. I just went 1:1 on that. Yes, I eyeballed it. You're allowed to do that. And with the reducer, how much you want to add. I usually tell people anywhere from 5% to 10%. You can go as little as 2.5%. And I know some people that if you add enough of the 40-30 or any of the other balancing clears to it, you can add even more. Let's say you have a nice color red that's just pure illustration and you want to make it really, really thin. Well, for one thing, by the way, it will never become transparent. That's a completely different paint line. But if you want the illustration red to be very, very thin and light, don't just add the reducer straight to it. You could, but what's going to do is you're going to lose adhesion factor because you're going to be killing the resin load. What you want to do is you want to increase the resin load. Best way to do that? Add that 40-30. You could even add the Autoborn 6000. You could add any of the UVLS clears right in to that paint. So I'm going to come in and add just maybe 5%. It wasn't even that, but very, very small amount of the reducer, the 4011 by the way. And then I'm going to stir it. And for a micron, I've always tell people you want the consistency of milk. And I always get the perfectionists to say, well, 1% or whole milk or buttermilk. Oh, come on, give me a break, milk. That's a little bit on the thick side. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Now, if you're one of those measuring freaks, no offense, then knock yourself out. Get your little gradated, you can measure it. I'm making such a small amount here, I'd have to use one of those small medicine cups. Now, another trick I want to tell you, I use this in automotive, this trick, and it works in illustration too. Whenever you're mixing, you're cocktailing, you're adding your balancing clears, you're adding your reducer, and you're adding this together and you mix it, let it sit. In the automotive thing, it's a different freaking animal. 15 minutes is all that matters. Let it sit 15 minutes. Now in automotive, it makes night and day difference between a success and a failure. It works the same in this. If you're doing super fine details, mix your stuff up and let it sit for 15 minutes. What this gives the time is for the reducer and the binder and the illustration paint to all kind of emulsify, all kind of settles out. It kind of starts, it basically just let it sit. Hey, you let a steak rest, let your paint rest. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my micron, to figure which one I had over here. And let's go ahead and pour some of this mixture. I know I haven't waited 15 minutes. Do you really want to do that? You want to wait 15 minutes? No, we're not going to. But if this was an actual job, I'd let it wait. We could always cut away and come back later. They're just lying. It's like the casserole that's already in the oven. So here we go. And it's a little bit more pressure I normally use in the micron, but by the way, microns don't break if you use more than 3 psi. You can use a lot in it. I'm going to come in here and you can see the level of detail that I can get with this micron. And that's opaque white. Can you imagine what I could do if that was freaking, and look at the gradation level. Much finer, much more subtle. But I can still come in and honk it on there, make it really nice and bright. Very, very subtle. And subtle is not just the amount of pressure and trigger, it's the distance you're going as well. But look at the number of little dots you can do. Very, very fine. And I won't lie, it is cleaner than when I was using it right out of the bottle. Well, it's cleaner because I'm using an airbrush that's like literally half the size, and we literally reduced the paint down. Not by half. We had probably like maybe about 10% reducer, and I went 1-to-1 on the 40-30, and I did that just to kind of thin down that heavily opaque white pigment. So I want to show you this right here just so you can see that you can use different substrates, different balancing clears, the reducers, the 4011. I'm not going to hyper reduce it and over reduce it for doing a wash or anything, but you can do that as well. You can do anything you want. Matter of fact, I always tell people when they ask me and there's like, well, what should I do? Experiment. It's not going to blow up. It's not going to kill you. Just try it. It's like, oh man, I need some reducer. If it acts like it needs some reducer, it probably does. Add a little bit more reducer. Oh, I added too much reducer. What do? It's not the end of the freaking world. Add more paint. Add more 40-30. Custom paint is its own warning label. Fine art is its own invitation to experiment. If you are not experimenting, you're not a custom painter. You're a production guy. That's cool, but here, come on, be custom, invent. And that's the one thing we do here at Kratex. We give you all the tools to be as creative as possible. All you need to do is I'd like to say experiment, but you know something? Just play with it. That's all lab guys are doing. Experimentation is just play with a clipboard and a lab coat. So hope you enjoyed this little demo right here, and we're going to go on from that. Okay, I've shown you a whole lot of cool stuff about the Kratex illustration line. I'm going to show you one little extra thing here that makes the illustration line, the flagship of Kratex Colors, stand apart from the other systems. And it wouldn't be something you'd think about for painting. It's the erasability. Now, when you're thinking about erasability, that has to do more along with fine art or illustration, where you come in and you want to use a removal technique where you're using an eraser or even a blade to scratch or scrape the paint away. Well, the tougher the resin, the more it's going to resist that. And the nice thing about the illustration line, remember this is the opaque paint illustration without any reducer and without, right out of the bottle, straight from the bottle. And if I come in with an eraser, I can come in and literally, I can even very lightly blend away something, or I can come in, let's say with a pencil eraser, and create like some interesting hair effect. It's a great removal technique. If you get a little bit too crazy with this, like, oh, I erased too much, you know, just come back in and re-airbrush it with a little bit of that white. So the more, now if you wait 48 hours, even illustration paint by themselves will start hardening up a little bit more, so it'll still erase, but it'll be more difficult. When you add that 40-30, like we did with the Micron, now I'm not sure, because this is still pretty fresh. It's taking out a little bit on the side, but look. See how much tougher that is? It'll eventually come off because it's fresh. In 48 hours, that wouldn't erase at all. Like right up here, look, that's just as white as that. And a single pass it came off. This took 3 passes, the center's still off. That's the difference between adding that 40-30 acrylic urethane into 1:1, the illustration white, made it that much more durable. Now that is fantastic for hard surface applications like for maquettes or sculptures or even a wall mural, or in many cases canvas, but you want to be careful. Like I learned the hard way. I used this on my paint on a design once and I was planning on doing erasing. Came back the next day and I was not able to erase. I had to come up with a different strategy. So neat little trick that the illustration paint have that you can then, you know, if you don't want that erasing technique, you can come in, add some of that 40-30, and you're good to go. So we showed a whole lot of neat stuff here, showed you the different sizes, talked about the different palettes that are available, the different clears that can be mixed in with it, the reducers, we showed you a little spraying, and that's pretty much the illustration line. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions, or you really have some, you know, you have something that maybe we didn't talk about, go throughout the Kratex Colors tech site. Guarantee the information is on there, and if not, you can always contact us, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. So my name is Craig Frazier, and from the Kratex Colors Center here in Connecticut, I will see you next time.